As we look ahead to Week 12, we focus on the second time in 3 weeks that the Patriots have a chance to knock off an unbeaten. Hey, how are you, folks? Jason Horowitz, CBSSports.com's NFL columnist Clark Judge. Glad to be with you in the end zone. Presented by Nuvi Phone, the navigational phone from Garmin. Ian Eagle will join us again next week. And Clark, so much emphasis on this ball game, the best for last in Week 12 when you talk about the Saints and the Patriots.
Right.
You know, I don't think people put the Saints, despite the fact that they're 10-0, in that class with the Colts, in that class with the Patriots. So is this as important for them as it is for the Patriots, who are 7-3?
Well, it's probably more important for New Orleans, because I think when you look at New Orleans, and you mentioned Indianapolis, there's really not a feeling that this team's here to stay. And with Indianapolis, it seems like every year they're 7-0. I mean, for the last 5 years they've been 7-0, and they're always there in the playoffs. New Orleans really not, and you look at New Orleans was there in 2006 playoffs, but they've been away most of the time. And so I think they look at this as really sort of a litmus test for them going forward. We all know they're going to be in the playoffs. They probably will be hosting 2 games in there, but at least 1 game. And I think when you look at this ballgame, you say, this is a chance to measure us against the best of this decade. And quite honestly, I mean, it's the Patriots, the best of this decade. They're rolling well. They're not quite as good as they were in the past, but they're good, and I think they showed that against Indianapolis. So again, I think it is more important for the New Orleans Saints.
Which is amazing to say for a 10-0 team. But, you know, the other part to that is that the Vikings are breathing down their neck because they just have 1 loss. So this, you know, all of a sudden you could be tied if Minnesota beats Chicago also here in Week 12. I got to ask you about this, though, because Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady didn't disappoint.
Right.
Are you expecting the exact same thing from Peyton Manning versus Drew Brees?
Well,
Tom Brady versus Drew Brees.
Yeah, I'm expecting a shootout, if that's what you're asking. But there's something different between the Brees and Brady shootout as opposed to Manning and Brady, because Manning and Brady do it every year. You know, this is sort of a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And again, I think, you know, it's a chance to find out about Drew Brees and how he stands up against a great team that's been, you know, and a great coach, Bill Belichick. I mean, this is a guy who puts in special defenses for particular quarterbacks. Let's see what he has cooked for Drew Brees.
And he's got an extra day to get that in there, too, because it's Monday night. You know, one other thing to look at for this ballgame is that the injuries at corners for the New Orleans Saints could be a huge issue.
Yeah.
Last week, signing Chris McAllister, former Pro Bowler, but wasn't playing at the beginning of the season. Mike McKenzie they bring back because of the injuries. That could be a big issue when you're facing Randy Moss and Wes Welker.
Right.
Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts, because they go to Houston this week to try and stay unbeaten. And the Texans now, 2 times in 3 weeks, and with the bye, it's 2 times, they've lost the opportunity to go to overtime because of wide left. How does that carry over to the next week here for the Texans?
Well, I don't know that there is a carryover. I mean, they know what's at stake here. I mean, their backs are to the wall. They've got to win this ball game. And they came close a couple weeks ago in Indianapolis, but they lost with a missed field goal. So it's, you know, they look at this and say, we can play with these guys if we can just kick a field goal. We should have beaten Tennessee if we could just kick a field goal. We better hope this doesn't come down to a last-minute field goal, but I think they know now what's at stake here. Indianapolis, I saw them last week. The thing you love about Indianapolis is that they find ways to win. I mean, Peyton Manning doesn't have to throw for 300 yards every week, although he seems like
it was 299, Clark.
Yeah, 299. But they find ways to win, and last week it was the defense. They're playing very well. It's a complete team.
And the best thing about the Colts, too, is it's finding ways to win. The last 4 games, all decided by 3 points or less.
They win close games.
And it's amazing what they do. And as you said, Peyton Manning, biggest reason difference as to why they're winning close games and why the Texans are not. You also hit on Pittsburgh-Baltimore. This is a Sunday night game, and it's huge, too, because Pittsburgh has lost back-to-back games. You were in that stadium where Baltimore's off at 5 field goals. That's all they can muster against the Indianapolis Colts. What's going to give here on Sunday night?
Well, I mean, the first question I've got is, what's Ben Roethlisberger's health? I mean, if you don't have Ben Roethlisberger in this game and no Troy Polamalu, I don't know how you have a chance.
Now, Roethlisberger is expected to play.
I know he is. But still, I want to see how healthy he is, because, I mean, the backup, Charlie Batch, is out.
Yep.
I mean, so now you look at Big Ben or nothing else, and they've got to have him for this ball game. You know, they've got a history also against the Ravens. These are great games, but they beat them 3 times last year. So I think they look at this game as this is a chance to finally put them in our rearview mirror. For Baltimore, it's a last gasp here. I mean, Baltimore is sliding. They're fading. They just lost Fabian Washington. They're not as good as they have been in the past, but I do think, you know, desperate team at home. I like desperate teams at home. This team's really desperate.
And play without Terrell Suggs as well. And speaking of desperate teams at home, they're not desperate anymore, but all of a sudden, because of what's happened in the last few weeks, Tennessee at home against Arizona is a big game. 0-6 to 4-6, and Vince Young and Chris Johnson this is going to sound extremely strange to say this. they may be the most dynamic duo in the NFL. You can't stop them with the speed that they have from Chris Johnson and with the ability that Vince Young has and the threat that he has to run.
Yeah, it's a matchup nightmare for anybody,
any defense.
And I watched that Tennessee game against Houston, and I'm not a big Tennessee fan, and suddenly found myself going, I love this team. I love watching them play, and I want to see them get back in here. Of course, what you've got going also is that Arizona unbeaten record on the road, So let's see what happens. But I love what's going on in Tennessee.
They're 5-0 on the road. Are the Cardinals for the first time since 1948. That was 61 years ago as the Chicago Cardinals. Don't forget, folks, the End Zone is brought to you by Nuvifone, the navigational phone presented by Garmin. You can get everything you need out of a great phone from AT&T service. You get, as you expect from a Nuvifone or from a navigational phone from Garmin, GPS navigation, preloaded maps, 3-megapixel camera, and all with AT&T service. For the rest of the End Zone, check it out here on CBSSports.com, including our favorite Thanksgiving memories. For Clark Judge, I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care, folks.